When we take a look at the great leaders who have passed throughout history, or even those who are present today, we find that a key component to their leadership is their ability to speak, or their ability to express their ideas in a manner which is proficient and intriguing. Now, when looking at history, we find one such leader who stood out in this regard. For it seemed that no matter the topic, he was able to speak in such a way that the audience would be intrigued until the very last word. This, of course, was none other than the second Khalifa, Hazrat Mirza Bashir Uddin Mahmood Ahmad Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to another episode of Ahmadiyyat, Roots to Branches.
I came merely to sow the seed. That seed has been sown by my hands. It will now grow and blossom forth, and none dare impede its growth. Ahmadiyyat, the true Islam, is the flourishing tree. But this is not just any tree. This is the tree, the seed of which was sown under the guidance of Allah Himself through the hands of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian alayhi salatu wasalam, the promised Messiah and Imam Mahdi. Its miraculous growth in the midst of difficult and seemingly impossible circumstances is indeed a tale that is bound to increase one's faith, as if this is the tree that grew from concrete. Presently, under the guidance and leadership of our beloved Khalifa, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah strengthen his hands, the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat is now present and propagating the peaceful message of Islam in over 200 countries around the world. The Jamaat has built over 15,000 mosques, over 30 hospitals, and over 500 schools. It has translated the Holy Quran into over 70 languages. This is but merely a glimpse at the progress and a fraction of the achievements of Ahmadiyyat in only one single century. But this is Ahmadiyyat at present. Let us now take a step back and witness exactly how Ahmadiyyat, by the sheer grace of Allah, reached this point and attained these heights. For history is not only a means to understand and appreciate the present, but also a means to envision the future. Follow us on this journey.
On today's episode of Roots to Branches, join us as we take a look at some of Hazrat Khalifatul-Masih II Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu's travels during the year of 1920, during which he delivered a great number of many memorable lectures within the span of a very few days. We will then move on and see that not only did Hazrat Khalifatul-Masih II Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu address great scholars, but he would also address the youngsters when he addressed the youth of the community, advising them as to their responsibilities. Then we will see how Ahmadiyyat continued to grow throughout the world when more missions were established in various parts of Africa. Then, after taking a look at two very prominent publications which were published in this year, we will take a look in the end at a very profound speech and lecture delivered by Hazrat Khalifatul-Masih II Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu in response to some opposition which had arisen during this year. But first, let us begin by taking a look at the first Ahmadiyya mission which was established in the United States of America.
Those nations, Western in particular, that are granted the extravagances, the luxuries, and the huge amounts of resources of the worldly life, their condition becomes almost depraved of spirituality because it consumes them. And their dispositions and their nature becomes so inclined toward worldly pursuits that the idea of a man standing up and calling them toward contrasting ideals like humility and meekness, spirituality, leading a life of simplicity, it becomes almost abhorrent to them. This was one side of the scenario in America. On the other side, following the demise of Alexander Dowie, the Christian clergymen were raising huge claims and slogans to this effect that John Henry, one of the clergymen in America at that time, he says that the time is not far because the light of the cross has reached Lebanon and has reached the east and the west, that it would even tread through the oceans and enter into the Khana Kaaba itself. This was the scenario in which the late Mufti Muhammad Sadiq Sahib radiallahu anhu, one of the most legendary missionaries and companions, in fact, of the promised Messiah ﷺ, was sent by Hazrat al-Muslih al-Maw'ud radiallahu anhu, the second successor of the Jamaat Ahmadiyya. And when he arrived on the coast of Philadelphia, it is remarkable to see that this man, who's literally coming from another world, and in this particular scenario is entering the fray, he's not even allowed into the country because of his polygamous views. He tries to explain that, look, polygamy is only permitted under particular circumstances, but they put him in a holding cell along with other European inmates. This was his first experience of America. But his loving disposition, his amazing, venerable countenance, his genius mannerisms won over these youth so much in the next few months that he would spend in this holding cell, waiting for a verdict of whether he could stay in the country or not, that he won 15 of them over, preaching to them. And they revered him so much, even before their conversion, that they used to themselves arrange for his daily prayers and give him his privacy when it came to his prayers, and even serve him, he says. Now he says that these chambers were very confining because there was only one door that opened twice a day for their meals, and there was only room on the roof to walk from time to time. And it always happens that the humble beginnings of a missionary sometimes spell out the grand success that is to come. And this is exactly what happened. In May of 1921, the verdict came that he should be released. This was based off of two things. Number one, Hazrat Muslih Maud radiallahu anhu had issued a warning to the United States, saying that until now, you have only dealt with or taken on worldly governments. But now try your mettle against taking on a spiritual government, one of the heavens, the Jamaat Ahmadiyya. He said, you will not be so successful. It is so amazing to see that on the other end, the media had created a huge clamor about Mufti Muhammad Sadiq Sahab's radiallahu anhu's case. As such, the pressure was on, and so they had to release him right away. When they did finally release him, he saw a lot of success outside of the holding chambers as well, and then he relocated to New York. Basil Sahab, what can you tell us moving forward with this story about what took place after this?
In the following, in the following missionary work that Hazrat Mufti Muhammad Sadiq Sahib Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu began, we noticed that whatever hurdle and whatever trials came his way, he did not let those waver him from the fundamental reason why he had arrived to the United States of America. When he was stopped in Philadelphia, he moved on to New York, the largest metropolis on the continent, which is even still now, and rented an apartment, began his lectures. People began to convert. When he realized his work had gained efficiency in New York, he moved on to Detroit. And in Detroit, there was a sizable Arab population, even now, and he did an extensive job giving the message of Islam Ahmadiyyat amongst those Arabs. Finished with Detroit, he moved on. And his next city was Chicago. Chicago was the city that was to host the first Ahmadiyya Muslim mosque in this continent. And today we know this as the Sadiq Mosque. It's located in South Chicago. This was the first property that was bought by the Jamaat and converted into a masjid and made the initial national headquarters of the Jamaat in the United States of America. Then later on it switched. But to give you a perspective on the extent to which Hazrat Mufti Muhammad Sadiq Sahib Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu traveled in the United States of America, he went all the way to Ross, North Dakota. That's located almost 2,500 kilometers inland. Now in the earlier part of the 20th century, that is in fact a challenging feat. Only to get to a few people in that tiny township who had a chance of accepting the truth that God had sent to this era.
From February 13th, 1920 to February 23rd, 1920, Hazrat Khalifatul-Masih II Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu traveled to Lahore and Amritsar. Now, the reason that these tours are so much more important is the fact that within these 10 days, Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu delivered 6 lectures, which were on a wide variety of topics. The first lecture which he gave was on February 15th, 1920, and it was in response to the British Prime Minister of that time, Lloyd George, who had said that the future of peace in the world was with Christianity. Now, not only did Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu refute this notion, but he also proved that, in fact, the future of the peace in the world lay with the religion of Islam. Now, another lecture which Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu gave during this time was in the Martin Historical College, which, as you may recall, was where he delivered his lecture on the outset of dissension in Islam. Now, this lecture which he gave was on the topic of various historical facts pertaining to Khilafat. Now, the speech which he gave was actually 3 hours long. And after he had delivered this lecture, the person who was presiding this session, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Sahib B.A., he said in his closing remarks that today Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu has uncovered such great points of history which had never been before heard. And he also said that, his speech was 3 hours long, but I noticed throughout the audience that throughout his speech, everyone was listening with great attention, despite the fact that this was such a long lecture, just showing how intriguing this manner in which Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu spoke was. Then on April 7th, 1920, Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu made his way to Sialkot, where he delivered a lecture on the topic that the future religion of the world is Islam. Now, when speaking about, or writing rather, about this lecture, Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu says that, as I was speaking, I felt that there was a light shining down upon me from the heavens, and that rays of that light were emanating from me into the audience and pulling them towards me, which only proved further that it was truly God the Almighty who was helping Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu whenever he spoke in order to spread the message of Islam and Ahmadiyyat and guide not only his community but the entire world.
On June 21st, 1920, the second Khalifa Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu established a school for missionaries. The scholar chosen to undertake this responsibility was Hafiz Roshan Ali Sahib Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu. Hafiz Sahib had the responsibility and the honor of educating students like Maulana Jalaluddin Shams Sahib and Maulana Abul Atta Sahib Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu. Hafiz Sahib dedicated himself within regards to tabligh and tarbiyat with these students until his last breath, and his last wish being that these students do an outstanding job in tabligh. After the passing away of Hafiz Roshan Ali Sahib Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, the Jamaat was in distress. So in 1956, Huzur gave an address in which he said, "Do not think that these men are not everlasting. Rather, our Jamaat has men who are even more everlasting, such as Maulana Jalaluddin Shams Sahib and Maulana Abul Atta Sahib Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu." Huzur went on to say that the wise status and knowledge of our Jamaat still remains. In 1920, Huzur gave an address to the Jamaat, and his poem began, "O young ones of my Jamaat, I have something to say, but on the condition that my words do not go to waste." Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu went on to further explicate the roles and responsibilities that the youth has within the Jamaat. Huzur said that no work can be pulled forward within the Jamaat unless it is further pulled by the youth, who are the future. Huzur says that we must carry out the roles and responsibilities that Allah has bestowed upon us, which is why it is crucial that we act upon this address. Through doing so, we will notice a change and reformation in ourselves. Though Huzur has also said that it is not only important that we reform ourselves, but initiate the reformation in others.
The year of 1920 saw the publication of 2 great literary works of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. The first of the 2 was entitled Sirat Khatamun Nabiyyin, which was written by Hazrat Mirza Bashir Ahmad M.A. Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu. Now, the first part of this was published in 1920, and the second and third parts would be published in 1931 and 1949, respectively. Now, in these books, along with presenting very authentic facts regarding the life of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, Hazrat Mirza Bashir Ahmad M.A. Sahib Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu covered the aspects of the greatness of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, using these facts to show the great status which the Holy Prophet ﷺ had, which was unique to this book as opposed to other works of Sirat done in the world. Now, regarding this work of Sirat, Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu said that I find this book to be greater than all the other books of Sirat which have been written. And the reason for this is that in this book, are included the teachings which we have learned regarding the Holy Prophet ﷺ from the promised Messiah ﷺ. Now, the second literary work was Malaikatullah, or the Angels of Allah. This was a book, which was a compilation of the addresses given by Hazrat Mirza Bashir Uddin Mahmood Ahmad anhu on the occasion of the Jalsa Salana of 1920. Now, in these lectures, Hazrat Muslim Maud anhu covered the aspect of angels in Islam and the Islamic perspective on angels, rather. And he spoke about literally every aspect which one could imagine regarding this topic. He talked about the truth of the existence of angels, and he talked about their purpose and the duties which they serve. And this was important because this was a topic which many people asked questions about. And in the way which Hazrat Muslim Maud delivered these lectures, he answered every question which had ever arisen regarding this, which had been brought to his knowledge. And he further made sure that no more questions would be raised regarding this. This is how comprehensive these lectures were, and they would later on be published as a book named Malaikatullah.
One of the main characteristics of developing nations is that they're often stricken with calamities, disease, famine, drought. These things strip down the luxuries and extravagances of the first world from the people, in that the struggles that they face are so basic, so fundamental, and so compelling that they are no longer as tarnished by the luxuries and sentiments of materialism. This gives way for the acceptance of far more spirituality when a messenger does come with his message from God. As such, Hazrat Musleh Ma'ud radiallahu anhu in the year 1921, motivated by a particular narration of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that a man would arise in Africa whose purpose would be the annihilation of the Khana Kaaba. Motivated by this particular narration, Hazrat Muslim Maud radiallahu anhu felt it absolutely pertinent to send missionaries and establish missions in both Ghana, the Gold Coast, as well as Nigeria. As such, one of the most legendary missionaries of our recent past, Abdul Rahim Nayyar Sahab, in this year 1921, was sent at the behest of Hazrat Muslim Maud radiallahu anhu and established 2 jamaats in 2 countries that were to become cornerstones of the faith of the Messiah and huge centers for the future propagation of Islam and Ahmadiyyat. So much so that today, the future missionaries or the missionaries in training from different Western Jamiat, missionary training schools within the Jamaat, are sent to Africa once they graduate to get a feel for what it really is to live the simple life of the people in the continent of Africa. Basab, what can you tell us about the actual historical events that led up to the establishment of these 2 very great Jamaats, Ghana and the Gold Coast?
You mentioned the untarnished nature of these souls, and that is in fact very relevant to the initial efforts that went in from Abdul Rahim Sahib Nayyar Razillahu Anhu. You know, when he arrived on Salt Pond on the 28th of February in 1921, the day he landed on that port, there was a man, chief of a tribe, the Fanti tribe, the only Muslim tribe in that entire region in Ghana. It was a majority Christian nation to the south. And this man, the Chief Mehdi, said that when that man arrived, Nayyar Sahib, I had a dream, in fact, at that time, that same night, of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam having entered into my room. In the following few days, I believe in a week, when he came across Nayyar Sahib, listened to what he was presenting, his desire to reform the Islamic nation and people altogether, immediately he called his entire tribe, about 500 people in total, in front of his house, and desired Nayyar Sahib to deliver a speech. And right after the speech, the entirety of that tribe, that's 500 people, pledged allegiance following Mehdi Sahib. And so we see that on the exact same line where you see the untarnished souls, beautiful idea of God simply seasoning the souls to accept the truth of the promised Messiah, the exact same happens in Nigeria, where following into a few months into Nigeria, Nair Sahib arrives, and when he lands into Lagos on the port, he discovers a few people, about a dozen people belonging to the Ahle Quran sect. And with this sect, he gets to find out that these people had made prophecies, in fact. 12 years before, they were told a white man, a non-African man, would come and give you the message of the promised Messiah, that you shall accept. And they converted. So a beautiful amount of missionary effort went in there, but God, in fact, had seasoned those souls to accept the truth of Ahmadiyyat, and that is what followed when we see the hundreds of thousands of converts that we see today, alhamdulillah.
On March 19, 1921, the Ahrari Jamaat, who were opponents of the Ahmadiyyat community, planned to hold a jalsa in Qadian, in which they intended to pursue their hate-filled propaganda against the Ahmadiyyat community. It was rumored that the Ahraris intended to defame the grave of the promised Messiah ﷺ, and to destroy mosques, at which point the Ahmadiyyat community took precautions to ensure the safety of Ahmadis in Qadian, Beheshti Maqbara, and our mosques. After the Ahrari Jalsa, the Hazrat Muzzamil Abdul-Jalaal invited the same government officials and police officers who attended the Ahrari Jalsa. At this Jalsa, Hazrat Muzzamil Abdul-Jalaal began to explicate the injustice that our community experienced, when those officials sat down and listened to the hateful speech and did nothing. The sweets that these officials were presented with began to taste like poison to them, at which point when they realized the error that they made. As we can see, ill-willed propaganda towards the Ahmadiyyat community is an age-old tale.
And with that, we've come to the end of this episode of Ahmadiyyat, Roots to Branches. On today's episode, along with the publication of 2 great books, as well as the spread of Ahmadiyyat to many more different countries, we took a look at the great speaking ability of Hazrat Khalifatul-Masih II Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, and saw that he was able to deliver lectures on what seemed to be all different topics, whether they were about religion or history or religious history. Hazrat Muzzamil Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu was able to deliver his points in a very proficient manner, whether it took an hour and a half or 3 hours. No matter how long or how short Hazrat Muzzamil Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu's lectures would be, the audience would listen with great attention, for he spoke in a manner which was very unique. What's more, he was able to cater to many different types of audiences, whether they were great scholars, whether they were members of the community or opponents of the community. Hazrat Muzzamil Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu was able to speak to them all, which only further proved the point that God's divine help was with Hazrat Muzzamil Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu through every single step of his life. So with that, Jazakumullah for watching. Until next time, when by the grace of God, Ahmadiyyat will have branched out even further. Assalamu alaikum.
हर चार सू है शोहरा हुआ कादियान का हर चार सू है शोहरा हुआ कादियान का मस्कन है जो के महदिए आखिर ज़मान का मस्कन है जो के महदिए आखिर